Welcome, everybody. Thank you for turning up for Osho, How to Find Joy in My Life. And my passion has always been how to actually understand Osho's proposal for finding joy in my life. And he explains that he really is addressing every different kind of mind. So we all have to find what resonates for us. So, and with a medical background, I tend to approach this in rather a simple, practical way, kind of guided by all the people I've done sessions with, actually. And so I just want to share with you what works, at least for me, and maybe it also resonates for you. So the course starts, as Elizabeth said, exactly at this time 1 week from now. So it's easy to remember. And as Elizabeth said, there's some homework in between. So I'll send you some reading material, a video, and there's an exercise we do every day throughout the course. And actually, I found some Book of Secrets meditations which exactly fit this model. So we'll share them as well. So it's quite rich in many, many different ways. So, and as I understand it, as a starting point, Osho's explaining that we're all born with everything we need to live a fulfilled, joyful life. Then, through our upbringing, we become disoriented and lose our own natural way. And he refers to this disorientation like weeds, which we acquire in this way. And they need to be removed, he says, so that the grass can grow by itself. It's a sort of simple metaphor for what is it that needs to happen before meditation can just happen. What's in the way? What's causing all our upsets? What's causing all our difficulties in life? So in this course, I just want to offer you a kind of clear understanding of what removing those weeds means in practice. So then you can find your own path to joy. And that is the key. So firstly, what's really interesting is what we can and can't do. And one critical issue is that the understanding is that we cannot do so many things that we just take for granted. So when you stop and wonder about it, you realize you actually can't do sleep. Can anyone do sleep? No one has ever managed yet. Can you do relaxation? Actually, no. Then what about love? Can you do love? Probably not. Trust, change, gratitude, meditation. I mean, actually, once you start to really look at this, you realize that nothing that's really valuable on the inner world, none of those things can we do. And the weeds are all the cause caused by our doing, right? So that means that the healing can only happen from our non-doing. And then we can discover joy. So when it comes to those weeds, it turns out that basically only non-doing is going to lead to healing. And that's the only doorway to joy. So a simple example, let's just look at a way this works. So let's say someone insults us or something happens in our daily life where we really get upset. So normally we might get into a fight with the person. We normally react to that insult, but either way we feel bad about what happened. And often we sit and stew in our unhappiness. Sitting all day remembering that insult, remembering that argument, remembering, I think we're all pretty familiar with how that works, right? And then now the part of us that's being triggered is sitting in our unconscious, something left over from some earlier experience, often caused by some event in that disoriented upbringing, or downbringing is probably a better term. So what is that something? It clearly has psychological aspects to it. It's clearly neurological. It probably has immunological aspects to it. And actually, you know, if you've been following medicine recently, everyone is really into inflammation. I'm sure this is exactly how inflammation happens. It's the psycho of psychosomatic, exactly this issue. So it's pretty interesting, right? And who knows what other elements might be involved. And all we know is that it's energy that's trapped. And it's trapped and destructive. And it's sitting in the unconscious, and the unconscious wants it gone. Right? So in order to kind of call it something, let's just be really scientific about it and just say this thing, whatever it is, stuck in our unconscious, let's just call it a blob, a very scientific term that we can all easily spell and remember, right? And it's been sitting there for ages. And the unconscious has no interest in keeping it there. The unconscious is not into the left luggage business. What am I doing? This has been here since you were 5 years old. It's blocking the corridor, blocking the flow of energy. You're not 5 years old anymore. If anyone said that to you today, you'd whack them. Of course. But it's still sitting there. Because as a little child, something happened and you were there and it was really awful and you couldn't do anything about it, and you very intelligently dropped it into the unconscious. I mean, if you think you're sitting there with, 37, do you know how many cells you've got there? 37 trillion cells sitting there saying good morning to yourself. 37 trillion. That's, an unbelievable number. And each cell is sort of packed with a zillion different little characters running around in circles doing their thing. So this is an extraordinarily complex phenomenon. Think how your immunity works. So is it surprising that this incredibly intelligent mechanism also has a very smart way of dealing with repressed childhood emotions? Of course, why wouldn't it? How would it leave that out? So when the child drops something down there, and you can trust that kid for sure. That kid is the world leading authority on being that kid. So the fact it got put there is, reliably the right thing to do. And it's put there so that we can deal with it later. And then, of course, later never comes. And the unconscious, of course, wants to get rid of the blob, right? Remember, the unconscious is taking care of your heartbeat and your digestion and your breathing and everything important, right? So the unconscious is kind of on your side. So the unconscious can see that this kind of destructive, energetic blob, which is going to go sideways at some point if we don't get rid of it. So the unconscious really wants to get rid of the blob, right? And the only way it can happen is we just have to allow it. So here's how this kind of works. This is trapped energy. And that feeling you get when someone insults you is basically triggering some blob inside you. That's the mechanism. So then you say, okay, so why is that? Why is this all important? Well, the unconscious remembers trying to get rid of this blob because the unconscious wants you to heal. And the unconscious knows this is a destructive lump of energy not going anywhere. So what's the unconscious going to do about this? what it does is every time that arsehole comes by and insults you, it goes, hey, he's come by again. Okay, see how this feels, right? And is really happy to alert you so that you feel that really unpleasant feeling triggered by Fred, whatever. That's the mechanism. Now, the unconscious is saying, great, we don't want to encourage Fred, but we do want you to feel that feeling. Because that is the blob. And only when we allow that feeling will that feeling be transformed from something destructive and stuck and uncreative into something constructive, creative, whatever you want. It's just built in. So the unconscious is using this mechanism to use every single insult in your day simply to hope that on this occasion you'll stop and be with that feeling so that you can be healed. In fact, healing yourself. And what's really fascinating about this mechanism is that once the unconscious realizes that you're listening, and actually you're prepared to hear what it's got to say, which is take care of the blob. It doesn't matter about the triggering mechanism. Ignore that. Yes, they may be really ugly. They may be awful people. They may be behaving incredibly badly. It's no issue about that. But the question is, what is its value for you? And the value for us is this is only triggering something inside me. Otherwise, who would care what they said? There you are walking down the street, two of you, and somebody says something, does something. Your friend is outraged. You don't give a toss. Why? They are triggered and you're not. It's just a unique reflection of our different environments, our different upbringings. That's all, nothing more than the situation. But it is unique, which means the blob is unique, right? So if the unconscious knows you're being receptive to that sensation, ignore Fred. You're only interested in the sensation. Ignore, let's say you're having a fight with your partner. Stop. It's triggering you because of something in you. Actually, they're just doing you a favor by pissing you off and actually showing you what it is inside you that you really need to take care of. A kind of counterintuitive way of looking at all these insulting, difficult situations you have in your life. But it's absolutely critical to understand that the trigger is irrelevant, right? So when any of this situation happens, right, you just have to allow it and basically feel whatever it is. And remember about this blob. Everything about the event, the original, whatever this thing is, it contains all the information about whatever needs to be healed. It's not that it needs metadata and someone to help you describe it or the mind to join in and have a word or two about it. It's all completely self-inclusive. That is it. So it's allowing that, which is the healing process. Just that. Okay, which has some really interesting implications. Now, there's a key insight into this, which is from Osho. I'll just read it to you now. Pain is not inherent in any feeling, but arises only after the intent to reject it arises. The moment you decide to reject something, pain arises. So do you see the implication of that? Every time we, instead of taking care of the blob, hey, why did you be so rude to me? All that stuff starts. you've missed the chance. Yeah, you can have a good fight with whoever it is, but it doesn't help you. And worse, it's not just not helping now. What you're doing is, in fact, reinforcing the whole process because you're avoiding the feeling and you're making it painful. So think of that, right? By deciding to get involved in the trigger, you're hurting yourself. That's what causes the pain, because it's that involvement which is avoidance. And you're preventing healing. And you're reinforcing so that for sure it's going to happen again. Have you noticed how many times you get upset? It keeps happening, right? Of course. And the solution is simply to turn it completely around. Whatever it is, yes, thank you, but no, thank you. I'm busy. And take care of whatever it is that you're feeling. That is the key to the whole game. And not taking care is avoidance, and not taking care is what's painful. So turn this around. If that's painful, that means you're avoiding the feeling. See, that's quite a challenge. Think how many painful things are happening in our lives. And every time it does, that's me avoiding that feeling. Otherwise, it wouldn't be painful. And if I'm not avoiding it, I'm dealing with it. And if I'm dealing with it, I'm healing it. And if I'm going to heal it, it's going to be gone forever. And the energy trapped is transformed into something positive, creative, constructive, not negative, destructive, and poisonous, right? So this, as you see, there's some really revolutionary implications here. So now you can see that when Osho talks about how psychoanalysis is ridiculous, and actually psychotherapy is really not what it says it is, right? This is exactly the opposite of the Western approach, which is to analyze and talk about and discuss the blob. But the blob is the blob. Nothing can be added or subtracted from it. It is what it is. End of story. Talking about it, labeling it, what? So you know the story, you may know, right? I offer you a rose flower. Okay? And in that moment, here you are with the rose flower, and you're at one with the rose flower. And then, like we all do, I say, oh, what a beautiful rose flower, right? The usual, right? And in that moment, I'm no longer in touch with this rose flower. I'm now in touch with representations of this rose flower in my mind. Not this rose. In fact, I'm in touch with every rose flower except this one. All the rose flowers of the past, all the rose flowers of the future, every rose flower except this one. And in fact, there was a recent paper in Nature where they demonstrated exactly this point. The moment someone starts verbalizing, other bits of the brain light up different. So what that clearly demonstrates is that the moment I start to discuss my feeling, what I'm actually doing is no longer being in touch with this feeling. I'm being in touch with feelings in general from yesterday and tomorrow, but not this feeling, which means I'm avoiding this feeling, which means that every time I talk about it, I'm avoiding. And avoiding is the opposite of healing. So that's pretty weird when you think about it. I mean, for sure, you want to talk about your feelings. Everybody says you should talk about your feelings. And even if you don't want to talk about your feelings, your therapist for sure wants to talk about your feelings. And it seems that is exactly how to avoid healing. Amazing, huh? Incredibly interesting. So these are all hypotheses that you can just demonstrate yourself anytime, and you find it totally works, right? And I'll explain it, give you a good example in a minute. But so you can see this is really it's a sort of revolution, because it's the non-Western or whatever you call it, the non-Western approach simply doesn't care about analyzing. Because you see what this means. I don't care what the blob is. I don't care what it's called. I don't care whether it's Uncle Charlie or Uncle Fred who did it. It doesn't matter. This is what it is, and everything is contained. All the rest, the yakety yak, is simply a way of making sure it doesn't go away. So this is quite a revolution. Absolutely the opposite of just about everything we've ever been taught about how to feel better, right? So verbalizing per se is counter healing, okay? Analysis is against healing. And the answer is simply to be with the feeling. Rather than going home and upset and verbalizing internally and externally about how bad I feel. And the real answer is simply to be with the feeling and nothing else. And of course, as we said at the beginning, there's nothing you can do about the feeling. So there's nothing you can say about it. We just discussed that. And there's nothing you can do about it either. That leaves you a little stumped then so now what? Can't do anything, can't say anything. You can allow it. That's all. Right? So basically that is all that needs to happen. So actually, to kind of make fun of the serious way we deal with our problem, this is more complicated, no more complicated than the Beatles, actually. Or what are we saying? Let it be. That's it. Nothing more complicated than that, right? So, and that is perhaps the essential part of this course, is really to allow us to discover how to heal ourselves. And I just give you this little story. So someone I'm working with, they've had fear issues a lot in their life, and they've sort of managed to deal with them. And just so you know, let's say I'm frightened of situation ABC, whatever it is. Now, I may have been terrified when I was 5 years old, let's say. Now, that thing that terrified me could have been a shadow of a tiger on the wall. It doesn't mean that anything terrible or real actually happened to me. It just means I perceive something and now it's a blob. The rest is irrelevant. Was it a real tiger? Not a real? It's irrelevant. The blob is all that's relevant. That's what we have now. And dealing with now will deal with everything. So we went through this, the issue of fear. And she's an ophthalmologist who does eye surgery. So every Monday, she's sitting there kind of going through tomorrow's list, checking on this case, that case, and, get little butterflies in your stomach. It's just going to kind of stop, get your knife and fork poking around in someone's eye. It's a little, oh, geez, God, you could easily screw that up. You know what I mean? You've got a blind person. So, little scary, not surprising. And there she is. Turns up for work next day, and because sometimes there's someone in the next office who's more experienced than her. So if something goes sideways, she can always say, "Hey, come on." But sometimes he's not there, and she's like, Anyway. So we went through all of this a few times, and then she writes me an email and says, "It's amazing. There I am. Fear comes. I invite the fear to help me with the operation. I welcome it, allow it, enjoy it, never feel any fear, and I'm doing so well. Now they've promoted me. I have to do more difficult operations." Isn't that incredible? And that's a real life example. So if it works for someone who's got some fear while they're doing eye surgery, I think it's probably going to work for absolutely everything. And that's really the kind of the most interesting part, perhaps, or let's say it's the most transformative part of this course. And the rest of the course is really building a structure around it so that it really makes sense for you and you can practice it and see how it works. So, and interestingly, someone sent me some Book of Secrets meditations. There's 3 or 4 of them that fit exactly into this model. So we can share them during the course too. So does anyone have any questions? Meaning of
Yes,
life or anything?
there are a few questions.
Hello. Yes.
There is one from Anita, who says, I thought the unconscious is rather interested in keeping the blob. And similar from Rupa, same question, isn't our unconscious self bringing the blob to the surface from our unconscious?
Well, they're both, okay. That's the unconscious has no vested interest in keeping anything down there. The unconscious, it's just there, right? So it won't. I used to think of the unconscious as like it's sort of stuff buried in the basement. But actually, better to think of it as just hidden behind the curtain. So you pull the curtain back, and that's where all the unconscious stuff is. And it's only unconscious because we insist on keeping the curtain closed. If we would allow the curtain to open, there'd be nothing unconscious. And the unconscious is not just full of bad stuff, by the way. Do you remember that moment when you were totally thrilled and a little child chasing butterflies, and it was the most beautiful moment of your life? And we all said, no, no, don't chase butterflies, go and get a job and be a doctor. Actually, still there's this passion for butterflies that's waiting also to emerge if only we would allow ourselves to open the curtain. So basically, the unconscious doesn't want to keep it there and is not in any way conspiring to keep it there. It's just left luggage. Just that. Why the hell is it here? I don't want it here. You don't want it here. It's only here because you forgot it. If you'd actually just open the curtain a bit, then it can be released. And that's exactly what the second question is. Yes, it is material being released from the unconscious. Because when you look at what Osho says about self-hypnosis, it's basically you learn how to communicate with your unconscious. Then you go into the unconscious, but you take some consciousness with you to see what's there. And then at the third step, you basically remove the barrier between the conscious and the unconscious. And that's a typical Osho 3 steps to heaven and it's all over. No barrier between the conscious and the unconscious. End of story. Because also don't forget that all inner conflict is based on a misunderstanding between the conscious and the unconscious. So this curtain is really the cause of all the trouble. That's why there's a misunderstanding, because they can't communicate. They can't see each other.
Then there's another question from Jasmina. And when you talk about pain, does that also count for physical pain?
No, I don't think it's the psychosomatic. There are ways of dealing with even physical pain, which is in terms of how awareness responds to pain, but everything is psychosomatic. So, what do they say? 70% of visits to doctors are because of psychological phenomena. How much of any particular situation is psychological? Who knows? If you walk out of the house and get hit on the head with a meteorite, that's pretty unpsychological. Not much you could do to, to kind of provoke that. But who knows? Even you fell over, you broke your leg. Why did you fall over? Why did you break your leg? Why are there more heart attacks on Christmas Day than any other day? There's that inflammation from that triggering process may well be involved. So I think someone said to me, because I'm not a very spiritual person, and someone was saying to me, oh, I want to go to India because I want to find a healer. And then I thought, that's funny, because I don't remember Osho much talking about healers. And I was thinking, well, actually, if there's something wrong with your body, find a body person to fix it. And if there's something wrong with the mind, well, it's kind of no mind or bust. So where does the healer fit in? And so my interest is really encouraging everyone to see how they can heal themselves.
Then there's a couple of questions about feelings. So sometimes feelings give a lot of pain or cause pain, and sometimes we love those feelings. That's another question.
Well, the first, point I made is that what Osho is saying is feelings only hurt because we reject them. So you have to stick that on your refrigerator, because it is such a upside down comment that you keep coming back to, because it literally means your question is, why do I keep hurting myself? Or your question then could be, why do I keep rejecting the feeling? Because it keeps hurting. That's the really valuable question. Why do you? So that's your journey to find all that out, right? And you don't have to explore anything or do anything. All you have to do is stay with the feeling. And something which is really important to know is that all repressed feelings are in the body. So you'll see when we do different exercises that basically encourage you to relax into the body, that's perfect, because you're using the body as like a cradle in the present to be able to be at one with, in communion with, the different expressions with that pain, which is the key to dissolving it and allowing it to be, the energy to be transformed. Now, the second half of that question was,
Sometimes we love those feelings.
yeah, well, now you're into the, if it's a feeling that's a joyful feeling, what's the problem? If you're enjoying a very painful feeling, then that's a little bit that's a little bit upside down. But if it's a joyful feeling, then enjoy it.
And then Joanna asks, living the suppressed emotions instead of analyzing them to ease the old pain. Did I get that right?
Say the first bit again.
Living the suppressed emotions instead of analyzing them to ease the old pain. Did I get that right?
Yes. So say the first bit again.
Living the suppressed emotions instead of
Living. Okay,
analyzing
living
them.
them. Okay, well, okay. That issue of living needs to be more understood. Yes, you're absolutely right. Being with them, being in communion with them, and just allowing them, that is often tricky just to get your head around, maybe. But once you play the game and start to allow it, then of course, then it happens by itself. You don't have to in any way think about it, work it out. And of course, just the, the kind of the most amazing thing about this whole process, if you were, let's say a Martian comes and starts talking to us and said, oh, wow, that's pretty interesting. So actually, that would be a way anybody could deal with any psychological hurt or, wow, yeah, interesting, right? And then he might say, well, how does anyone learn to allow anything? That's pretty tricky, isn't it? How do you learn to allow? Ah, well, it just happens that we do have just the job for you. It's called Osho Kundalini meditation. And basically, if you can allow the shaking, you could probably allow anything. Home, game, set, and match. The Martian will be happy.
Kavindra is asking, could you share more about where Osho talks about the curtain analogy and the method to pull it back?
Well, it's consciousness, isn't it? He's talking about how to make the unconscious conscious is, so he would basically say the reason we're doing all the meditations, let's say you're doing, like, for example, you go to the meditation day and you do all these different meditations in the course of a day, right? And they're all different ways of encouraging us to stay more conscious while we're actually cleaning our teeth, having a shit, having a shower, cooking, eating, walking, living, whatever it is. Try, as he puts it, to take that feeling into our 24 hours. And that itself is gradually, basically empowering the consciousness part of ourselves, which in turn diminishes the unconscious part of ourselves. That would be a kind of thumbnail sketch, perhaps.
Anita is asking, is there any literature about this and what can you recommend?
I will bore you to death with the homework that comes each week, and you'll be groaning under the load of all the stuff I'll send you.
Then Jivan is asking how staying with the feeling can help to heal and how to handle the trigger caused unconsciously, which keeps coming up.
My brain's not very good. You have to speak slower. Try again.
How staying with the feeling can help to heal and how to handle the
Well,
trigger.
let's do one thing at
Okay.
a time.
Okay.
How to spell? That's what we're talking about. Staying with the healing, you'll see as we go through the course, actually, that I just called it let it be. It's just doing nothing in the present soul, just doing nothing, allowing whatever it is to do whatever it does, right? And actually, at the end, you realize that is what has always been called choiceless awareness. It happens to be the same thing. That's just a very long, complicated word. Let it be is a little simpler, but that's the first bit. And then the second bit
Is how to handle the trigger caused unconsciously, which keeps coming up.
yeah, well, that's tricky, you see, because you would really like to whack them, right? I mean, they're rude, ugly, I mean, they do it again and again. I can get the hell out of it. It's it's such a almost delight in, stuffing them one because they really earned it. But actually, that is what you have to try and understand is not helping. So then they're coming at you with whatever the triggering mechanism is. And okay, so first you have to understand, okay, it's for sure you're triggered. That's why you're pissed off. It's not like you didn't care. You're involved. Okay. So if you're involved, you're triggered. So now, can you catch this quickly enough so you realize that triggering is a doorway to healing? A reaction is a doorway to pain and a continuation of the suffering. Can you catch that? Can you then actually even be grateful to your unconscious for bringing this to your attention? Because one day you're going to have to deal with it if you're not going to die in pain. So it's doing you a favor. Can you then switch, flip the flip the script, whatever they call it, so that you can actually go, wow, that insult is actually a way of the unconscious helping me heal from whatever was the original, whatever it was that is being triggered again and again and again, because this never goes away. And the fact it gets triggered by all, Tom, Dick, and Harry all trigger it, tells you it's got nothing to do with Tom, Dick, and Harry. It's the trigger. That I can heal. Who cares about them? Nothing you can do about that. They have to sort their own lives out. But this you can deal with. And the next bit of the question?
No, that was that. You
Oh, that
already
was it. Oh,
answered
good.
that. So JT is asking, so being happy means letting go of everything?
I don't know. Is that your experience? I'm not sure. I think you have to be really careful. Words are tricky. You can use catchphrases and they may mean this or that. I mean, if you wanted to sort of wonder all the different things you might have meant by that, I'm not sure we're talking about happiness. Osho's really clear. He's talking about joy. It's beyond the kind of happy, unhappy, unhappy, happy game of life. It's really a different space he's pointing at. And what was the rest of it? See if my memory's
Is
terrible.
being happy mean, does being happy mean letting go of everything?
Letting go. Well, you see, letting go can mean lots of things to different people. You know, someone lets go of themselves and they don't clean their teeth anymore and they don't feed themselves and, they don't wash. That's letting go, but that's not exactly a great idea. But not holding on to the emotions might be what it's talked about, but it's not the way we hold on to it is by getting lost in the trigger. That's why we hold on to what it is. So yes, in one sense, it is letting go, but it's letting go like, say, the first stage of Osho Kundalini meditation, where you're totally relaxed, at ease, in the moment, simply allowing the body to shake. Or in the second stage, simply allowing the dancing to happen by itself. So, of course, you can apply the word let go to that, but you need to be a little careful. And I'm sure the people who use the metaphor of the flow, they would similarly be able to identify with letting go into that flow state, but we just need to be, just precise about what experience you're talking about.
So Kavindra is asking, could you share an example of a part of the blob, a moment, an external reaction, something that happened, or our reaction to something? What is this blob made of? Memories, emotions, or our ego's reaction to something that happened?
Who knows? And luckily, who cares? Because your blob that you identify is totally yours. It's unique. Your experience, no one will ever know what your blob is made of, tastes like, feels like, looks like, colored by. No one will ever know. You can talk about it and we'll go, oh, yes, I know fear, but I don't actually know what you're feeling. And you don't know what I'm feeling. And no one ever will. As Osho says, when you go inside, you don't meet anybody there. It's absolutely your unique situation. So it doesn't matter what it's made of. Who cares? All it matters is what it feels like. And you're the only one who can feel it. And in the process of feeling it, you're the only one who will ever experience it. And it'll never be the same for anybody else. Which is the genius of this approach, is it actually doesn't matter what's going on. I mean, we don't have to think about it or analyze it or talk about it or nothing. It's that simple. Just let it be. There's nothing else to do. Strange but
Kenny,
true.
Kenny is asking, you need activation one way or another. Otherwise, it's dissolution. How to not be triggered by anything would drive to anything still be.
Bit
Not sure what.
complicated. You're kind of outwitting my brain there with too many words, I think. Um, by the way, I'll give you an example. Someone said, give me an example. So a really close friend of mine died very suddenly. And I was like, fairly sort of desolate about it. And there I was sitting there kind of just weeping. And then I kind of went, hey, Amrito, I thought you were the one who said, just allow the feelings, And sure enough, in that moment, I really just felt exactly what I was feeling in terms of the loss of, my best friend. And from that moment on, I never had another moment of pain. I totally appreciate that whole phenomena and my friend as ever, but the pain never came. And we'll go into why that is in the course, because it's not what you think it is. So did I really avoid that question? If you could like rephase it in sort of kindergarten level, I probably can handle it.
I don't know, Kenny, did that answer your question? Kenny, who asked that question?
Anyway, come back in a minute, Kenny, when you got something a little my level.
And then someone from a phone, so I don't know what their name is, how to get over our past, and what the question goes in my mind, like why it happened with me, why that other person is happy after ruining my life, how to come out of this feeling of loneliness.
Right, exactly. I mean, these are all exactly what this whole approach is designed to deal with. Because if you change that around, you see, what did you say? How to deal with the past. Okay, now we don't care. If the past has any significance in the present, I will feel something. And that will get triggered by somebody, something. That feeling will be there. Right? So if I'm not feeling anything, whatever it was doesn't matter. It's not significant. If I'm feeling something, whatever it was that happened doesn't matter. I've got all the information here. Forget the past. Simply deal with the way it is expressing itself today. So that's the bit about the past. Then loneliness. Well, loneliness is, we're going to go into that in detail because it's a real misunderstanding. See, aloneness is our nature, and the crowd is just a habit. And we're all brought up on the assumption that unless the neighbors like us, we must be unworthy. That's how we're all brainwashed. So actually, you're lonely because your mind is saying, where is everybody? But actually, the moment you realize that's nothing to do with you, it being in touch with yourself is the key, then you're totally delighted to be alone. And the amazing thing is that the moment you're happy to be alone, everybody wants your company. Ridiculous. So there are, lots of this. Everyone has to see. We are really kind of caught in a loop. We're born, we go through this brainwashing process. So we believe all kinds of things which are absolutely against our best interest. So now the problem is I'm lonely. No, that's not true at all. That's just the way this whole thing has been presented to you and how you've been persuaded to view reality, which is a hypnotic fog based on all the influencing effects of a completely insane world. And it reminds me, there's a lovely, lovely piece which I'll share with you during the course where Osho's someone's asking him, so what's basically the difference between the way you look at things in terms of psychology and everybody else? He says, my understanding is that you are all normal. And that basically all the things that are called abnormal are basically the result of you surviving an abnormal society. And that all the psychology and psychoanalysis and all that does is try and bring you back to being able to sort of be normal in the madhouse. Do you remember that scene, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? Do you remember when they go on that on the boat trip? Jack Nicholson and his guys, they're all walking up the plank and they meet the owner. And suddenly there's all these mad guys. And he goes, oh, well, Dr. Snodgrass and Dr. Finkelstein and suddenly they're all doctors. It's just a game of brainwashing. Anyway, That was what he's trying to say is there's nothing wrong with us, but we've been put through the mangle to come out the other end. And look, hey, you survived. Here you are, looking for something much smarter than anyone else on the planet is looking for. So far, so good. We're lucky, very lucky.
Christian is asking, are the blobs the same as the knots you mentioned last year?
Yeah. I mean, the same, exactly. The knots is a lovely metaphor from Mahavira, again, which makes the same point. Here's a rope. And in your upbringing, the rope gets knotted. And the knots is a sort of metaphorical expression for the unnatural events which we're put through and become part of us in some way. And then, as Osho says, it's so interesting because the knot has no real essential existence. You can't take a knot and separate it from the rope. It doesn't exist except as part of the rope. And now the rope is all knotted, you can't use the rope because the rope's all messed up because it's full of knots. But if you actually allow the knots to disappear, you will end up back with the original rope totally fine. And nothing was ever wrong with the rope. It's just these knots which are causing all our discomfort, dis-ease, etc.
Christine is asking, in everyday life, I very well know how to lift a curtain. However, I perceive myself incapable when it comes to make the unconscious to become conscious. Will you teach us techniques how to become conscious and how to take down the curtain?
Well, you see, they're really two separate things in a way. It's the same thing, but looked at from two different angles. In the Course, the whole Course is about being conscious. That's everything we're talking about. How to make the unconscious conscious. That is the whole game. And to pull back the curtain is really to look at what is our investment in keeping it closed. We keep it closed. It's we, without actually meaning to, we don't want that to come to the surface. Why don't we want that to come to the surface? Because the mind has been told that is bad. That's the bad stuff. That's the naughty stuff. That's all the stuff that mum and dad said, don't even go there. That's all the stuff that the priest said, no, that's all down there because we have been persuaded it should be hidden. So the moment we stop playing that game and realize that there is a constant attempt by the unconscious to say, would you just take a look at this? Because then if we respond, that will be the natural process.
Joanna is asking, living suppressed emotions in any situation directly, or do you recommend saving them to be felt later in a safe place?
I think you just have to do what you can, right? I mean, obviously, if you're in the middle of some crazy situation, you can't kind of close your eyes and go, you, and it could be a real danger. I mean, if a tiger comes around the corner, don't even think about anything except get the hell out of there, right? You know what I mean? The fear is completely appropriate. So it really varies. And yes, just give yourself the chance whenever you can, because I'm guessing you'll still remember that feeling later. And the other thing to remember is don't just wait for, the house to fall down. Choose little tiny episodes, little tiny events which you feel. There's a famous thing from, I don't know whether it's Lao Tzu or somebody, called the three difficulties. Some of you may have heard of it, where Osho is saying, so first there's action, and then every action is triggered by a thought. That's the second difficulty. And the third is some internal ease, which is triggering the thought, which is triggering the action. And it's this internal something or other. So as soon as it's tickled, touched, you feel it, take care of it. Because that's like the tail of the rat, I think. You're getting closer and closer to whatever needs to be released.
Last two questions. From Susan, what is the difference between a knot and a weed?
Same, just different ways of, just different metaphorical ways of saying something that happened in your childhood, which has convinced you that X is Y when actually X is X. And you've lived your life based on the misunderstanding.
Last question. I am stuck in my past and unable to focus on my present. And I think a lot about my future, get afraid, and I'm unable to sleep and get anxiety. Also, how to let go of someone who just wasted my 8 years of life in marriage. I feel there is too much filled in my heart, due to which I am not having peace of mind. My mind is always processing, and my heart is so hurtful.
Yes, I mean, you kind of got the full Monty there. You kind of, everything that you could imagine going wrong is going wrong, right? So you've got the past kind of driving you nuts in one direction. You've got the future driving you nuts in another direction. And in addition, you've got this sort of constant regret and anger and kind of annoyance, someone wasting 8 years of your life. I mean, it's a pretty full package. So start out by being very nice to yourself. You know, don't kind of pretend you're super person and you'll manage everything in a flash. Just accept. So you will find in this course, the key element is going to be acceptance. I haven't used that word today, but it is the sort of key word underneath allowing. Okay, so acceptance is where you're going to have to start. So you're going to have to accept that you have a mind which is constantly doing X, Y, Z. And you'll have to accept that your mind is running you ragged. And then you'll have to decide, okay, at some point, do I actually want to stay in that mind and have it drive me crazy? That's going to be your next challenge because that's what the mind does for a living. So if you're in the mind, get ready to be tortured. And there is no, you can't get around that. So then you would then go, okay, so I am feeling a lot about fear of the future. I'm feeling a lot about those awful times in the past. Okay, great. So you got a ton to work on. The body, okay, people say, of course, are surprised to know that the mind and the body never meet. Now that sounds ridiculous because everyone is sure, and Osho explains that the mind and body is one thing. Now, of course, they communicate, but in this context, they don't meet. If you have an itch, you cannot have an itch tomorrow. You can't have an itch yesterday. You can't be hungry yesterday. Bodily sensations are by definition in the moment, which is why Osho says, begin with the body. And all of those repressed emotions, the chaos of the future, the pain of the past, whatever it is, are going to cause feelings that are just like we talked about, triggering whatever is repressed. The blobs are there, the feelings are there, and what is not happening is you're not stopping and being with the feeling, which is in the body, which is here and only here, where healing can start. you're actually staying in the mind and in the area which is the triggering mechanisms. So you're living with the triggers and living very painfully rather than deciding to be here in the body where the mind cannot reach you and all you're left with is the body and the repressed emotions. Are you cured already? No? Okay. It can
So,
happen though.
so more questions, but I guess you will just have to sign up for the course for those.
Yes.
Yeah, because we're a little bit
Okay.
over an hour now.
Okay. So maybe I'll give you an example, just 2 minutes of your time. Just close your eyes a moment. And you don't have to change your position. Wherever you are is fine. Meditations and relaxation is not about being in particular positions and postures. It's just about being present. So what I want you to do is see if you actually could notice your right foot. And then I say, can you notice your left foot? And then I say, what about your left hand? Can you notice your left hand? And of course you can. But my question is, when I said to watch your left foot, did the right foot disappear? And when I said watch the left hand, did both your feet disappear? Because that will tell you whether you're relaxed or focused. Focus is one bit of the body at a time. Relaxation is all the different parts of the body at the same time. And focus has nothing valuable about it except completing your homework. Relaxation is the doorway to everything. And now see if you can notice the right hand. Can you notice the chair you're sitting on? Can you notice something behind you? Maybe there's sounds in your room, a fan or an air conditioning, or maybe noises outside, maybe even a smell. Maybe you live next door to a lovely Italian restaurant. So whether it's smells, tastes, or sounds, doesn't matter. They're all bodily sensations, all happening now. So now see if you can notice all those different parts of the body at the same time. And as you discover you can, you will notice you're really relaxing. The more you relax, the more different parts of the body you'll be able to notice simultaneously. And the more different parts of the body you notice simultaneously, the more you're relaxing. And of course, you'll find you tend to get very still. And as you are just sitting there still, the right foot doesn't need to keep telling you the right foot's on the end of the right leg. It kind of assumes you know that. And if you want to know where your right foot is, you'll check on it. So gradually the right foot goes quiet and the left hand goes quiet and your whole body goes kind of quiet. And then maybe the only thing left is the breathing. I hope you're still breathing. And you notice the breath in and the breath out. And what's really wonderful is to notice, especially if you were the person asking that last question, how you're totally here, just with the breathing. And if the mind comes in and wants to invite you off to the torture chamber, you can just stay here. Or if it catches you and there you are off in the torture chamber and you suddenly realize it, all you have to do is do nothing, come back here. Just be here where the mind cannot reach you. And as you notice that breath going in and out, you notice there's a gap at the end of the out breath. It's a little bit longer than the gap in the in breath. And that space after the out breath, body is silent. There's nothing much happening. And there's a little moment of emptiness, which can be really scary, except that it's actually the doorway not to nothingness, but everythingness. And that's the doorway the lonely person needs to go through and discover it's not about suffering from all that nothing, it's about enjoying all that something on the other side of the same door. So maybe I could just leave you for just 1 minute of clock measured time, just so you know this space is totally yours. And I'm just the maitre d' who introduced you to that space, starting now. Okay, that's 1 minute. And if you can stay present for 1 minute, then you can do it for 2, 5, 10, who knows. So I'll say thank you to everybody for coming.